everybody. I've got everything set up here. I'm using Play-Doh to kind of help demonstrate the story of Jesus and the story of us. Each one of these blobs of Play-Doh represent a particular person or a particular group of people in my life, and then each one of these cards tells who that person is. If each color of the Play-Doh represents something specific. As you can see here, the blue represents a human, the white represents God, and then later on you'll see black, and that represents sin. Okay? Each one of these have a little blue and a little white in them. Everybody has a little bit of God in it. That's the way He made us. The first card here would be considered my friends. The people I grew up with my whole entire life, people that I lived on, in their community, who I hung out with. Just some kind of stories of them and some just kind of trouble they've got into. And I myself am included in this category, I guess you'd say. Innocent kids, at some point in time in their life, there's several of my friends that was 13 years old, 12 and 13 years old, and smoking pot on a full-time basis, on a regular basis, with their family. As we were young 14 and 15-year-old boys who were going through puberty, we were racing to see who could have sex with the girl the first. And that's just kind of some of the things that we did. A lot of my friends that smoked pot, they eventually got to taking prescription pills. Some of them still do. A lot of them ended up getting hooked on cocaine and methamphetamines. And so we've all got a little bit of God, and we've all got a little bit of human. Of course, we're all human, and we've got a little bit of God in us. And so at some point in our life, we have drank the poison of sin, and we get pressed and we get mashed. And as you can see, as life goes on, with the friends on drugs, with the friends sleeping around, you can see that we've got just an ugly mess here of sin, and you barely can even see the God anymore because of the white, because of the black sin that's in that. And so that is just a quick little story of some examples of troubles that my friends have went through. And the next category is co-workers, former co-workers, current co-workers. I guess I don't really know many stories about my current co-workers, but my former co-workers, I'll show you this here. A lot of them have past that are divorces, adultery, sleeping around, drugs, single parents, mishandling money, just different things like that. And somewhere along the line, they somehow, in some different way, drank the poison of sin, and life mashed them, life oppressed them, and they now have a life that is involved with sin. And they have sin in their life that separates them and keeps them from what God fully has for them. Alright? And so you can see, both of these are very similar, my friends and my co-workers. The next one is my nanny. Alright? I have a very awesome grandmother. I call her Nanny. I lived with her for almost 6 years. She is just a sweet, innocent little old lady. I was young and dumb and messed up my college grants, and so she helped me pay for that, and I paid her back. She loaned me the money. She, let me stay there rent-free. Just an awesome lady. But as sweet and innocent as she is, sometime during her life, I guarantee you that she's been pressed, and she's made wrong decisions, and she's disobeyed God, just like everybody else in the past has. And so somewhere down along the line, she's had sin in her life. Now, we may not be able to tell it now because, like I said, she is a sweet little old lady. But as you can see, her situation is just as bad as everybody else's. You can see the black in there. God is the white. Blue is just the fact that she's a human, and black is the sin that's in her life. Alright? And that is my nanny. The next one is a local church member, lives in the Albertville area, and we're just going to name him Religious Man, just to keep from giving out his name. He is in church every time it's opened, is very devout to his church, and he reads his Bible 6 to 7 times every year, all the way through. it's believed by his family that he's just a perfect guy until some things happen. He has some anger issues, and life happened and pushed him and prodded him, and then it was exposed to the community and to his family about some sin in his life. Whether he wants to try to hide that or not, he's just like everybody else, and he has sin in his life. You can see just an ugly mess, just like everybody else is. Every story's different, but it's all they all look the same. They're all still an ugly mess. So that we're just going to call him religious man, and like I said, he is a very good person the majority of the time. Reads his Bible more than anybody else I know, but he still had his life as an ugly mess just as much as everybody else's is. The last person is probably a name you're familiar with. He is someone that's intrigued me recently. I've seen him on TV, and he is a very evil person. His name is Ariel Castro. He's dead now. He is the person who kidnapped the 3 girls and kept them at his house for, I believe, 12 plus years, raped them, tortured them, starved them. Several of the girls got pregnant, and he aborted the babies by punishing them and punching them in the stomach and just different things. And this is just a very evil, wicked man. And it's really apparent that he has sin in his life, the way he treated those girls, the things that he did that was just gross and disgusting. And so, as you can see here, just like everybody else, he's got a lot of the black in there that is sin, of course. And so, kind of see that there. Alright, so we've all got a problem here. God is solid and holy. This represents God. The white is God. And so, with that being said, God, this is detestable. This is ugly to God. The sin in this is unacceptable to Him. John 14:6 says, Jesus is saying, "For I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And so what I'm fixing to explain to you is, nobody can get back to God unless something happens and something changes. Alright? And so God, a part of God, which is Jesus, came to this earth, okay? And he was fully man, he was tempted to drink the poison. All of these here, every one of these, at some point in time, drank the poison of sin. And so Satan tempted Jesus in every way possible to drink the poison, and he never did it. He never was involved with sin. His life never looked like this. He was 100% God and 100% innocent. Well, for him to be able to be our sacrifice for sin, he had to take God's punishment. He had to take all of our mess, all of our garbage, and he had to take that on himself. And he had to take God's wrath. He had to take God's punishment. God hated this sin that was inside of us, and because of that, he had to punish us. And so Jesus stepped in place for us and took our sin. And you can see, just the same, you can barely see the God in there, and it's just a big glob of mess, and it's really ugly. Alright? And so Jesus did something with that. He died on the cross, and you can see right here. I tried to find something that looked similar to a cross and could not. He died on the cross, and so when he took that garbage and that mess, he placed it in the cross or on the cross, okay? And so he placed it on the cross. So then they beat him and they hung him on the cross. I'm sure you know the story. He took our punishment, horrible death, and when he died, of course, just like everybody else, they placed him in a tomb, okay? They placed him in a tomb. And so for 3 days, he was placed in a tomb. And he was dead. And then on the 3rd day, he rose from the dead. And when he came out, he was just like before, just just as holy and perfect as he was before. He didn't have the sin of the world. He took it on the cross, but he no longer had that. And because of that, he was able to give us opportunity just like him, to be just like him, be co-heirs with Christ. He took away our sin, he took away our garbage, and he made us just like us. My friends, I beg you to give your garbage and give your sin to God on the cross, and give it to Jesus on the cross and let God handle it. My co-workers, the same thing, and I'm sure my nanny already has, but if she hasn't, I beg her to do the same thing. Well, one day, we will either my nanny, let's say 25, 30 years from now, she's probably going to pass away, and she will go back to be with God, okay? And this still represents Jesus. This over here, the bigger blob, is God, okay? So, one day, she will go back, she will pass away and go to be with God, okay? And possibly in our future, we never know, Jesus is coming back. It's promised in his word that he's coming back. And so one day, he might come back, and my friends and my co-workers might have the opportunity to go with him once he comes back. And we all go to where we started, the Garden of Eden, where perfect relationship with God. There's no sin, there's no mess, there's no garbage. And so we go back with God. Okay? These two people here, they did not give their sin over to the cross. The religious man, the righteous man, whatever you want to call him, he believed in his works. He thought he could be good enough because he read his Bible 6 to 7 times a year, all the way through. Because he was in church every week, he thought that he was doing right, but he still never gave his problems. He hid them. He tried hiding his anger issues and all that, but he never gave them over to the cross and never gave them over to Jesus and God to handle. And Ariel Castro, he actually committed suicide in prison shortly after, convicted for life because of the horrible things he did. And I highly doubt that he ever gave his life over and his problems and his sin over to Jesus and for God to handle. And because of that, here's this red. I don't have to signify what this is. This is hell. If you do not give your if you do not give your sin and your problems over to God, this is the option that you have. I wish it wasn't an option. I don't like talking about it, but it's the truth. I would be lying to you if I didn't mention it. And it's an eternal punishment for disobeying God. And so as you can see here, their sin will be forever with them in a red blob called hell. So if you're my friend, if you're my co-worker, if you realize that you have sin in your life and you realize that you have disobeyed God and you are in need of God, you can take your life and your sin and your problems and you can put them on the cross and accept what Jesus did by dying for you, and also accept the fact that he rose from the dead and he's able to conquer with you overcoming sin, and he is the way, the truth, and the life, and that's the only way you're going to get to heaven is through him. And so if you would do that, that would be super awesome. I think that is an awesome idea and an urgent idea for you to give your life and give your sins and give your problems over to God, so that you can have, God has so much for you here, not just in heaven, but we can't experience that if we're still holding back, if we're still trying to be like this guy here, the religious man, and do our own works and try to be good enough and all that. We have to realize that we are a terrible mess and we're having to give it to God on the cross. I hope you enjoyed my demonstration using Play-Doh about the story of Jesus and the story of us. And thank you very much for listening.